guys, welcome to Motorites. My name is Amit and this, as you know, is the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. And this is Karan. He used to work with us earlier, but he is into a corporate role now. But he's still an enthusiast nevertheless. Now, since he came here with me and drove the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, and he has also seen the Thar Roxx, like a lot of you, he has certain questions about what are the similarities and does someone really need to pay whatever, like 45, 50 lakh rupees extra for the Wrangler if the Roxx can really do about 80-90% of the work. He has some very specific questions like a lot of you, and today we are going to try and discuss those questions. And while it's very clear that this is a more premium car, Karan has some specific questions and I think we'll discuss them inside the cabin of this car. What do you think?
Some really interesting questions because I'd never driven this vehicle before. I saw the Thar Roxx and they do look strikingly similar, but there's a huge disparity between the prices. Makes for a very interesting conversation with someone who's driven both the cars extensively and should have a lot of answers.
Let's get inside the car and discuss these two really interesting off-roaders in great detail. So Karan, ask away.
So my first question to you, Amit, is why would anyone buy this over the Thar Roxx?
Well, the answer to that is multifaceted because anyone buys something expensive because he wants to differentiate himself. The answer isn't necessarily the capability, but it's the brand also. So when you're driving this car, you are seen as someone who has more money, and someone who's driving something which is more premium, so which is the primary answer, right?
Correct.
Now, the Thar Roxx is also a very capable car, make no mistake about it. It comes with a very capable 4x4 system. It comes with a rear locking diff. And it can do 90% of the work that this car can do, might I say.
Okay.
But having said that, there are very clear differentiations between the two cars. And to start off, while as you mentioned, the Roxx looks similar to this, the dimensions are very different. This is a much bigger car.
Yeah.
It's a very, very big car. So if you park this car next to the Thar Roxx, it's going to easily dwarf it.
Right.
And the road presence of this car, essentially I'm talking about the people who are buying the Thar Roxx for Tushin.
Right.
So if you're buying it for Tushin, this car is going to make you look like someone who doesn't have much of a Tushin when it passes next to the Thar Roxx. However, if you park this car next to a Galant wagon, a G-Wagon, this is still going to hold its own.
I agree.
So that's the difference that I'm talking about. Like, you know, it has the real legacy, and someone who buys this car knows that wherever he goes, he's going to be looked upon with respect.
Right.
And then there are a lot of things, as I mentioned, you know, technically there are a lot of things which are different. This is a bigger car. It has been perfected over ages. It is the best SUV that the world has seen, arguably, because it goes to places where no other SUVs go. It has arguably the biggest fan base of any SUV in the world. And all of those things add up. Not just that, Jeep goes out of its way to make sure that the componentry on this car, especially the mechanicals, are very strong. It's sturdy, and there are details which you cannot see. But when you put it to work, you'd be able to figure. And Thar Roxx probably, you know, when push comes to shove, where it really have a crossing, where, you know, its capability is tested, probably this car will, you know, pass that crossing and that car won't.
Something funny I noticed today when we were coming to this place is the fuel attendant, and there were some people around him.
Yeah.
And they mistook this car for the Thar.
Right. I heard that.
And then there was one of them who knew his cars perhaps, and then he comes and says, this is not the Thar, this is Thar Kebab, which essentially means Thar's Big Daddy.
Right.
And it is in many ways. So in person, when you look at it, when you look at this car, it does come across as something very brute,
Right.
macho, and also still very likable, and
Right.
and something which does fascinate you. I don't know if the same can be said about the Thar Roxx because I haven't seen that car in person.
Well, the Thar Roxx, of course, is a very good looking car, and it does hold its own in a lot of ways. And in fact, there are some areas where I dare say that it's better than the Wrangler also. Like, it comes with an independent front suspension, which this car does not. So if you're going over bad surfaces, If you talk about comfort, if you talk about road holding, I think the Thar Roxx also is a fantastic car. Not just does it match this car, it outclasses it in terms of its road holding, in terms of its handling. As you would have seen last night, I was driving this car very spiritedly. Over smooth surfaces, this car is fantastic.
Right.
But when you have undulations, which a lot of Indian roads have, you'd realize that the Thar Roxx does a little bit better.
Okay.
So there are differences, and if you have any specific questions, I can probably help you understand the differences better.
So, one thing's for sure, given the price difference, this thing is for people who know their cars,
Right.
who know what they're getting into, who know what they want,
And they have the money.
and they have the money, and they do want that image, and apparently, they do want to be seen in one,
Right.
or maybe it's something that they've always wanted, right? They've always wanted a Wrangler. Like someone I know always wanted a Wrangler to be driven in Goa with the roof blown out.
Right.
But what's the biggest technical difference between the Thar Roxx and the...
So the first is the more metal. Like, it's a bigger car. As I mentioned, it's a car with better dimensions. It's got a longer wheelbase. It's a longer car. It's wider.
Right.
It's not taller,
Right.
but it's a bigger car. So of course, if a car is bigger, it's
Right.
going to cost more.
Right.
That's one. Secondly, the componentry on this car is more advanced.
Right.
The engine has more power, significantly more power, because the Thar Roxx is available only with the diesel and 4x4, right? So the power and torque numbers are very different. Here the power is significantly better. So it's a more powerful engine.
Right.
Then it also is about the expertise that you have, right? And Jeep has expertise
Right.
in nothing but off-roading.
Correct.
So they know what works, what does not work. So that by itself has a premium that you have to pay for, right? Finally, if you talk about the componentry itself, like as I mentioned, the Thar Roxx handles better, but it comes for a price. This car still has a solid axle. That car comes with an independent front suspension. So it has its own advantages on the road, but when it comes to going off the road,
Right.
it's far more rugged.
Right.
And when you're going over an obstacle, the difference in your ground clearance is going to be much less in this car. This will have better endurance. At the rear, it has a full floating axle, which means that the axle is free of all of the load. Like, the wheel can spin freely and it can take higher loads. Also, this can be upsized much better. The wheels can be upsized
Okay.
to a higher size. So if you really want to be going off the road, you can upsize this car. For the serious off-roaders, as you would have seen, people who go on the Rubicon trails, they completely change the mechanicals of the car. The suspension and everything is like, the stock bits are thrown out of the window,
Right.
and they completely kit their cars up with out of this world suspension and wheels. So the basics of this car allow for those upgrades a lot better.
Right.
Then there are bits like a front locking diff, which you don't get on the Thar Roxx. And when it comes to rock crawling in areas where you require the front of the car also to have a lot of traction, basically it's for areas where you don't have any traction at all. Front diff really comes into play. Then you have your sway bar release, which again is like, a fantastic tech to have.
Yeah.
All of those things come together, and on a crossing, as I mentioned, if there's an obstacle which requires all of these things to come together, then this car would be able to cross that obstacle and the Thar Roxx won't.
Right.
Finally, as I mentioned, the componentry on this car is sturdier, and when you have more advanced engineering, sturdier engineering, it costs money. Now, I'm not saying that the 75 lakh rupees that they are asking for it is entirely justified in terms of the cost. But they're obviously going to charge you money for their legacy and everything.
Correct.
And there is a significant amount of engineering that has gone into this car, and that also costs money. So, to be very honest, I think if the Thar Roxx is available for say 25 lakh rupees, and this one is 75, I think 50 is justified.
Okay.
Purely from a componentary perspective,
All right.
legacy perspective, rest is premium.
Correct.
You have to pay it, because if you price this car too low, then what's the bloody point?
Right.
If anybody can buy this car and get off of it,
Right. Yeah.
then
Yeah.
everybody would do it, right?
Everybody would do it, yeah. So, one more question. Like, I was driving this car and it felt so indestructible. Like, I would purposely put it in a pothole and still be careless. And even the situation where we're driving right now, it feels very indestructible.
Right.
Can you say the same thing about the Thar Roxx?
Well, I would say that with my experience with the Scorpio N and the XUV 700 and the Thar Roxx and the Thar also, that the componentry on the Mahindra cars is also pretty good. Like, you know, the mechanicals on that car, if you compare it with, say, the Koreans,
Right.
The moment you sit behind the steering wheel of the Mahindras, you know that you're sitting in something which is substantially better made.
Right.
So they put a lot of focus on the solidity of their componentry. There's no two ways about it that the cars, especially for the price, and in fact I did a video on why the XUV 700 is the most value for money 7-seat proper SUV in the world right now.
Right.
So for the price, I think that, you know, those cars are also amazing. They're very well built. But when you talk about the sense of indestructibility, that's where the experience comes in. That's where their, you know, arrangement with all their component suppliers, their engineering teams, and their experience with failures comes in. So this car is trail rated, and the water wading depth of this car is much better than the Thar Roxx. And why is that? Because all the electronic points are sealed. Water is not going to destroy it, right? And all of that again costs money.
Correct.
Then not just that, if you talk about the approach angle, the departure angle, for such a huge car, which is supposed to be used by the family also, it's better than the Thar Roxx. So approach is better, departure is better, but the breakover, thanks to the smaller wheelbase on the Roxx, breakover angle on the Thar Roxx is slightly better. But coming again to your question, for the price, it's an incredibly well-built car. And when you drive it, you know that you're driving something which is difficult to destroy.
Right.
But of course, like, you know, as I mentioned, that car is meant for the road primarily, because Mahindra has modeled it for the family. That was the clear message that we got.
Right.
This car has no compromises.
Correct. This is a hard.
So you throw it anywhere,
Right.
and that feeling that you get that, you know, you really can go out and do shit with this car, that feeling is not going to be matched by the
By the Thar Roxx.
Thar Roxx.
Right. Right. And I agree with you, because you do feel so indestructible. This place where we are right now and how we've been driving this thing all day. I don't know if I've felt like this in any other car before. So I think.
Having said
I
that,
agree.
the Thar Roxx is more comfortable, as I have experienced. And as you know that at slow speeds, at medium speeds, on rough patches, you would feel that, you know, since the suspension is slightly on the firmer side, you feel a little bit uncomfortable on this car. You won't in the Thar Roxx. So you have that advantage there.
Yeah, but what I can also say is, you know, although this car is riding on mud tires, and even on the road, I read some of the reviews, and you know, they did not have much praise for how it rides on the road.
But it's good, huh?
But it's great. It's comfy. My everyday car is a Polo GT, and it crashes into potholes and does a lot of those things. But we were driving this thing on the road, and it felt comfy. It felt very stable. Surprisingly, not as much body roll as one would expect from a vehicle like this. So that did really surprise me.
So, see, it's like, you know, a lot of people come and say Tashan and everything, right? So Tashan, I personally believe that it's like, you know, with brands.
Right.
There are people who are not rich who wear expensive brands because they want to look rich.
Correct.
Similarly, for someone who wants to show people that, you know, he has power or he has a certain expertise in driving, would probably buy a more expensive car to get off from.
Right.
And that essentially is the difference when you buy a car, you know, especially in the Indian context where people associate a brand essentially. So that's the reason also why Mahindra had to come up with the Thar two-wheel drive, because they knew that people are buying it essentially for the looks. But having said that, I think, you know, this car is something where proper engineering goes behind, and it's very evident in the latest generation version, which is this, where you have the Gorilla Glass, you have a full float rear axle. So they have gone ahead and worked on things which really matter and cost money and make it more rugged rather than making it look more butch from the outside.
Correct.
So that is the difference, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I would also say is, if I see both these cars parked alongside, the Thar and the Wrangler, I would know who's a more serious automobile enthusiast or someone who knows their cars between those two.
But it's also about
it's also about, you know,
the money then, yeah, of
aspect,
course.
yeah.
Like, if someone has the money, then
Yeah.
he would probably go with the Wrangler. But
Right.
with the kind of incomes that we have in India, you cannot really blame someone for driving
Yeah.
the Thar Roxx.
What I understand about the Thar Roxx now is like, this is a very desirable vehicle, right? Like it's a Jeep Wrangler, everybody's wanted one. You've seen so many of these YouTube videos or maybe Hollywood movies featuring one of these. And now, even if someone doesn't have as deep pockets, you have a way where you can fulfill that desire. But
Right.
then, for someone who has those deep pockets, I don't think we'll settle for something like the
Right,
Thar
of course.
Roxx. This really has no alternative to it in terms of what it does to you, how it pulls the strings to your heart, and I think there's no parallel.
It's about the details, man. Like, they have gone into the details and they've made sure that everything about this car is relentlessly focused about one thing and one thing only. Like, these guys could also have gone ahead and given maybe, a less hardcore off-road version as a cheaper option to increase sales, but that's not what they do. Like, you'll never see a Wrangler with a two-wheel drive version.
Yeah.
You'll never see a Wrangler
Yeah.
which comes with an independent front
Right.
suspension, which is like, more fragile.
Right.
It's purpose built,
Correct.
and that's where they don't compromise.
Right. Like, where on the Mahindra you can buy a two-wheel drive version, with the Wrangler you can buy a more hardcore version.
Right.
So it's the other way around.
Yeah, so they're moving in this direction,
Yeah.
higher. They're going higher, and the brand that you're talking about is trying to cater to
Right.
our population.
So I think for those who know that there really is no comparison, although they do look visually similar, they do have some equipment which on paper, does say, oh, okay, this thing is similar, that thing is similar, the approach angle is not all that much, and so on paper you can compare that, but it's that intangible feeling,
Right.
which cannot be expressed in words. You have to feel it.
Credit where it's due, man. I really think that Mahindra has created a fantastic product. The Thar Roxx as well as the Scorpio N are fantastic off-roaders.
Yeah, yeah.
They are fantastic cars on the road, very good engines.
Right.
The 2.2 diesel and the
Right.
2-liter petrol, both are amazing mills.
Right.
Transmission is fantastic.
Right.
And 4x4 for the most part, what we did today with this car, I think most of it
Yeah.
would have been handled by the other two cars,
Yeah.
also very capably.
Yeah.
So I think, for such a small percentage of the price of this car, if you're getting something which is so capable,
Right.
is kudos to Mahindra. But having said that,
Yeah,
where we started off from,
yeah.
I think this is something which goes that additional distance,
Right.
fills up that blank
Correct.
and tugs at your heartstrings just that wee bit more.
More.
And for that, you have to pay 3 times the price.
I mean, the price is bigger, but then if you can afford it, why not?
Of course, yeah.
And it's not that I don't think anybody who will afford it will come back and say, oh, did I really have to spend that much for what I'm getting at a lower price? Also, no.
No, yeah. There's a reason why he
nobody's
bought
gonna
it.
think
Yeah.
There's nobody's going to think that if they have the pockets, because they know what they're getting into, they know what they're buying. And it's only people who are on the fence, maybe not even buying into this segment or not even buying the Thar Roxx, are those paper fighters who would maybe compare these two things.
Let's cut a long story short.
Yeah.
What would you buy? If you had the money, if you had say 30, 35 lakh rupees,
Yeah.
would you go ahead and buy the Thar Roxx brand new, or you'd buy this one second hand?
I would buy this one used without any thought.
And there you have the answer.
Yeah.
If you want the Wrangler, you want the Wrangler, and it is a superior car. So please, those of you who are comparing the two cars, there is a significant amount of difference. Not the same cars, very different. And yes, Mahindra have done a fantastic job, but Thar is a capable car, but the Wrangler is in a league of its own. I really hope that it's clear. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to Motorids, and until next time,
Goodbye.
drive hard, drive free, and drive safe.